This seems like a fitting follow-up to The Flintstones, a game based on a TV property license that barely resembled the show it took the license from, and a game in which most people didn't get past the first screen. Knightmare is literally exactly the same, but instead of painting a wall, you watch a creepy old man walk backwards and forwards for infinity while Treguard tells you how bad you are at life.
You make me sick. You disgust me.
Ooh, nasty.
I loved Knightmare, the TV show. It was, and still is, one of the most unique ideas for a kids' game show you'd ever likely come across. I loved it so much, I ended up revisiting the first series for a collection of videos on this here channel, but thanks to ITV not understanding what transformative use is, I ended up jettisoning the end of the series into an existential nightmare just for the crack.
These are the remains of their feastings. The whites were once human, but now have no sight, speech, or hearing. And they're always...
I was going to follow that series up with a review of the game, but I couldn't actually bring myself to do it. I knew exactly what I was in for. It was the same crushing disappointment that I'd felt at the age of 9 or 10 when I finally got my hands on this game, and spent the entire time wishing I'd bought anything else. Firstly, Knightmare has one of the best theme tunes in television history. Knightmare the game takes a long, heavy dump all over the top of it. I mean, I guess it tried, but it's certainly not something you'd be loading up the game to listen to after a long day at school. Unfortunately, you have to listen to the entire thing before it'll let you continue. Okay, finally done. Let's move on to... Are you kidding me? I have to listen to this again.
I'm bored.
Okay, right. Game time, let's... Well, clearly I'm missing something already. This is actually Knightmare's first puzzle, in a way. It's called Read the Fucking Manual, because otherwise you're going to be stuck listening to this garbage for eternity. Pressing 0 on the keyboard changes screens, and no other button does anything. What you actually have to do is hold down 0 on the keyboard to start the game. Clearly a necessary sticking point for those who just want to get on and play the damn thing. Here we have it though, the screen you're all familiar with. You and your knapsack, a creepy old man that seems to be locked inside a cell with you, which I won't go into the implications of, a chicken leg on the floor, a rock, a window, a closed door, a candle to signify your health, and a giant fucking Treguard. From here, Knightmare plays out like a primitive point-and-click adventure game of sorts. You can cycle through a bunch of actions with the shift key, or press a letter to jump straight to that category of actions. Press enter on the one you want, then cycle again through a whole bunch of items to do said action on. This is all well and good, but it's practically impossible to know what it is you're actually looking at a lot of the time, and the millions of items and actions it lists may not actually be of any use to you in that given room. This, for example, is a rock. But I wouldn't know that was a rock until I've cycled through a load of other items I'm not even looking at, until I come across something that looks like it might be the right item. That's a rock, right? Is that a rock? Yes, it's a rock. With everything being completely monochrome, there's not a great deal to differentiate items, and half the time they just blend into the background, or you have absolutely no idea what it's meant to be. What is this, for example? A dinner plate? The moon? Am I looking at the moon right now? No, it's gold. Of course it is. How silly of me. So back in this room and the mysteries within, I actually got a bit further than this as a kid. Choosing open and then door means you can, get this, open the door. Although you can't do that on the next door, and there's now in this room, so basically you're back at square one. The only things you can do here are pick up food, pick up rock, ask Treguard and get nothing in return, ask this other dude and get equally nothing in return, ask the old man and get the most I'm an old man and I wish I was dead sentence in the world. And that seems to be it. What you're supposed to work out from all of this is that the creepy old man requires sustenance. And once again, I won't go into the implications of that. You need to have figured out that you can look in your knapsack to see what items you're already carrying when the game begins. And you actually start off with some water. It doesn't say a bottle of water, by the way. I presume your knapsack is literally just filled with liquid. If you don't work out that knapsack examining task, then what you may end up doing is giving the creepy old man the piece of chicken you found on the floor right in front of him, because apparently he's incapable of feeding himself, but nothing appears to happen. He doesn't even say thank you, which is a terrible lesson to teach children you're locked in a prison cell with. You can ask the old man a question again, but ultimately you'll be getting the same miserable response. So what you actually have to do, as well as providing him with the chicken leg he already had anyway, you need to give this creepy old man your sack full of liquid. Which again, I won't go into the implications. With the man now fed and watered, asking him once more will give you this cryptic bullshit, and then a spade appears on the floor. Pick up the spade, you'll need that for a very bizarre solution. Head back into that second room, dig into the ground, immediately get attacked by guards, run into the room on the left, and find yourself stuck back in the second room with no way to get out because the lock is back on the door and you don't have a spade to get out because, like all good spades, it was single use. Anyway, the point is, do not go back into that room because you'll soft lock yourself out of the rest of the game. Actually do that. Go back in that room because the rest of the game is absolutely not worth experiencing. Just leave it there. If I'd ever gotten here as a kid, I'd suspect this room with the two guards would be my next sticking point because, again, without any guidance, I'm baffled as to how you're supposed to know what to do outside guessing. You have to quickly bring up the actions menu, choose throw, then select rock, at which point you'll throw a rock. You can then use a button which will just throw said rock without needing to keep typing it in. But seriously, typing out an action like this while two guards are crowding your style isn't exactly intuitive. And that's a good way to sum up the entire game. At no point are you ever really told what you're doing, why you should do it, or how you should do it. So the vast majority from here on out is wandering. Every so often you'll come across a classic Knightmare enemy, such as the wall monster, which incorrectly insults you by calling you dog's bottom. It wasn't the wall monster that said this, of course, it was this guy that said that.
Hail to you, dog's bottom!
That's reason enough to throw this game in the bin, but we've already got enough reasons stacked up, so I'll chalk that one up to a mistake and let it settle in its own piss for now. These creatures that appeared in the Knightmare TV show would often throw down a riddle for the kids to try and work out, and so too do the monsters in the game. Only it just feels a bit out of place with the fast-paced action that the game has devolved into. There's quite a bit of gaming whiplash involved in general. You start off the game with I guess you could call it a puzzle, then you're fighting enemies, then you're aimlessly wandering while fighting enemies, and then you're asked where the Titanic sailed from, and then you're back to wandering. Knightmare isn't a particularly massive game, but it is full of things that will stop you ever seeing the end of it. Firstly, your stamina meter, shown by this candle on the right, just never stops depleting, accelerated more so by the enemies that randomly spawn in to brighten up your confusion. And secondly, it all just feels so aimless. It's the equivalent of being on the actual game show, but you don't have a team of children yelling instructions at you. You're just wandering around blindly with a helmet on. You can ask Treyguard for help, or the other dude, but they're generally useless, and one of them actively lies to you. I sat down and watched the RZX archive playthrough, and even having watched it from start to end, still don't understand what they did, or why they did it. They just did stuff, and then they got to the end, and there was a dragon, and then it was game over. There's also a lot of points where you can soft lock yourself out of progress simply by experimenting. This woman, for example, can be stabbed to death, which is obviously the first thing any sane player does. I don't think this sort of thing was ever really allowed in the TV show. But anyway, she has an item that you need, so killing her means you've now got absolutely no chance of success. Equally, those edutainment segments where you answer questions, if you get those wrong, the game just spawns infinite enemies at you and you can't leave the room, so make sure you get every single one correct all the time. Once again, game made for kids, ladies and gents. The 80s showing you how to on-ramp people into gaming. Sinclair User gave the game a 10 out of 10, which is honestly just insulting, but Crash Magazine threw down a 62%, which in 1988 I think is probably fair, because ultimately Knightmare has some nice ideas and does at least try to position itself as an electronic alternative to ITV's magnum opus. It's just that it takes those good ideas and consistently hammers you around the face with annoyances. With puzzles this difficult, a constantly ticking timer isn't necessary. With combat this flimsy, an inability to restore health is crushing. For every bizarre item solution that requires you to physically know what to use and when, there's a boring edutainment section in which you're asked to spot the wrong pattern for an angry wall monster. Ultimately, I'm not sure what they could have done to bring a Knightmare game to the masses. Personally, I'd have liked to see a game where you're one of the 3 kids who is instructing the main kid what to do, and you spend 50% of the game just arguing with the other kids while Treyguard tells you off for wasting time.
Hurry up, get a fucking move on!
Watching the computer-controlled main player get his left and his right mixed up as he steps into the abyss would feel a lot more interesting than the abyss of confusion the actual game holds. Unfortunately though, we're just left with this, and I guess sometimes being locked up with a creepy old man is better than the freedom provided by a single-use shovel.